Hey, thank you so much for watching, listening. We're continuing our series on pausing with purpose. I really like this series because we're looking at Jesus and times when he paused and looking at the strategy and the purpose of those pauses. And at the end of every episode, my goal is to give you keys to pause. So in the first episode, we talked about put your phone down. That would be a helpful key to pause. I forgot to give you the one in the last episode. So here's your key to pause that I should have given you in the last episode, sorry. But this key is, and this, you might think this is cheesy, but I think it'll help you. Sit in a park and listen for the birds. You're like, that's so stupid. No, it's actually not. Because when you sit and you're still and you listen for the birds, sometimes listening for the birds gives you enough distraction where you can exhale on the inside and feel, and finally have some rest and stillness. So that was kind of the key to pause from the last episode. But as far as this episode goes, I want us to consider a strategic pause and pauses that Jesus took. And I think that's very informative and helpful for us. And so when you think about this, in Matthew 14, verses 22 to 23, it says that Jesus had healed a whole bunch of sick people. People came to Jesus for free healthcare. You're like, that's kind of corny, kind of cheeky, but he healed them. And he healed them of all kinds of things. He healed a man with a withered hand. He healed blind eyes, deaf ears. He healed people who were sick, demon-possessed, people who were about to die, people who had bleeding problems. I mean, Jesus was like the walking cure for all kinds of physical ailments. So you have to appreciate, if you know that there's a dude who can heal all of the illness and sickness, he's going to be super, super popular because he's free healthcare. I mean, everybody wants free healthcare. Everybody wants healing from maladies of some shape, fashion, or form. So he's a magnet. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've ever been and had people pulling on you, hey, Jesus, hey, my arm, hey, my son, hey, my head, hey, my, Jesus, he's getting completely inundated consistently on a regular basis, not quite 24/7, but everybody's pulling on him. And then on top of that, so he's kind of done all that healing thing. And at the end of the day, he's like, there's over 5,000 people here. And if we send them away, they're going to faint on the road. So we need to feed them. So he's not only free healthcare, he's also a free lunch, so to speak. So this is like one day where he's healing lots of people. And then he's providing a miracle dinner, food, multiplying fish and bread. And so you have to appreciate, by the end of this whole day, he's healed all these people, he's fed thousands of people. I'm just going to tell you that even though he is the Son of God, I would propose to you that he was tired. And if he wasn't tired, his disciples were certainly tired. That's a long day of continual giving out and continual people and continual interaction and pulling and stretching and demands and oh my goodness. And I like this because Jesus paused. At the end of a heavy ministry time, he paused. It says that he dismissed the crowd. He sent the crowd away. He told his disciples, get in a boat. And he sent them across the Sea of Galilee, which is it's inherently a pause because you get in a boat, you don't have all these people and demands around you. You have fishermen, so that's their natural habitat. They know what they're doing. So it's like, oh. And it says Jesus went up on the mountainside to be by himself. I think there's a lot to be said for pausing after heavy workloads. And if I'm talking to anybody, I'm talking to myself the most on this. Because, and as I age, thankfully I'm getting a little bit more intelligent, but there have been years and some decades where I would have heavy workloads and I didn't pause. I'd be strung out from a long trip or traveling or something, and I'd come home and I'd jump right into a continuous heavy workload. And you're like, well, that could burn you out. That's true. It could. But I'm wanting to encourage you that when you have those heavy seasons, that at the end of that season, plan for some pause. And it may not be like you can take a vacation or whatever. Some of us don't have that flexibility or the finances for that. But there is value in figuring out, well, what can I do that would be a pause? What if I just have like sit on the porch, or I go to a park nearby, or I go to the library and I sit and I read, whatever, but take some time to pause. Because when you have given out, when you've had a heavy work season and the demand, it's very important that you do something to settle down, to recover, to restore. And I believe, and I really do believe this, I believe that God wants to help us walk into some of those restoring pauses. But I think sometimes we don't cooperate with God because we feel like we got to achieve, we want to feel important, we have responsibilities, and we don't always follow God. And I like this in Psalms 23. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I am his sheep. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." It's important we have to cooperate with God to restore our souls. And when we have these heavy, and life has this, life undulates. You have peak seasons and then you have times where, So in those times where God brings you, restores your soul, leads you beside still waters, exhale, take it. Don't, and we're like, oh, I feel guilty. I ought to be doing, should, I don't know. Just wait a second. Recognize that God is giving you a gift. The gift of pause, the gift of rest. And the purpose of that is to restore your soul. As well, I would say, is to have some reconnection and settle back in with God's presence and get back into identity, get back into secure love, genuine love, and get back into that continuous abiding fellowship with God. Sometimes the busyness, activities, responsibilities can kind of diminish some of our connection with God. But God can always bring us back to a season of pause to restore that connection and intimacy and closeness. So let's be aware that when we have heavy work seasons, when God provides a pause and cooperating with God for that pause, that we would really relish that, value it, and absorb what the gift that God is giving us in that pause. So here is your key. Your key for pause, because I forgot obviously in the last episode, but here's this episode's key to pause, is be purposeful with your attention. Be purposeful with your attention. And the reason I say that is because I know for myself, I can be easily distracted. Lots of squirrels. You know, you go through your Instagram thing, you're like, ooh, and then you want to look at this and chase this one but what happens is we get distracted, we get off course. We're like, what? How did I wind up here? And you think, oh, I chased a squirrel, a shiny object. I heard, So be purposeful. Be conscientious that, wait a second, that was a distraction. I'm going to stay on target. Keep your focus, keep dialed in, keep your attention. And if you struggle with that, ask God to help you. Hey, please help me to pay attention better. Help me to be mindful of my attention. Where am I spending my focus, my eyes, my ears? What am I staying present with? And help me to pay attention and be purposeful about my attention. So thank you for subscribing. Of course, hit the notification bell right there. Make sure you give me some feedback, likes, dislikes. And here's a question for you to answer. What is an activity you do to relax, to kind of exhale? And it can be a physical activity. It can be, you read. You're like, well, I relax and exhale when I sleep. But what is a relaxing activity for you? And we have an amazing joke as we finish. So I think this was kind of funny. To everyone out there who is suffering from paranoia, just remember, you're not alone. You're like, that's kind of mean. It is, but it's also kind of funny. Thanks again.